What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team.
What's up, dudes? Rhomas Men's Team. We are back in action. I apologize for my appearance right now. We took the weekend to go skiing, and I caught a little head cold, I think. But totally worth it. Haven't skied in about a year, and it was a really good time. MFG, let me throw the ball over to you, man. If you don't mind, you were vulnerable enough and awesome enough, as always, to talk about like one of your headspaces a few weeks ago. And just want to see if you wouldn't mind providing an update on it.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the past, when stuff like that comes up and you feel like shit, typically my way to handle that was to, search for a reason for it, trying to find rationale, try to find something to blame, you know what I mean? And then end up projecting onto that, causing collateral damage. And then at least now I have an actual mess to clean up. So I almost self-sabotage with the collateral damage, and that way now I'm dealing with these problems and distracted from the original challenge. Whereas now it's really in the past few years just being able to be honest with myself about how I'm feeling. Instead of trying to find a rationale or a reason to why I feel that way, I can just be okay being like, all right, I'm fucking depressed or I'm miserable. And then at least I'm open about it, but also too, just the ability to separate myself from my feelings. You know what I mean? Just because I feel depressed doesn't mean I have to shut everything down. You know what I mean? Or wait till I don't feel depressed to do things. It's like, oh, okay, I don't feel good. Well, all right, still do the things you do every day. And kind of carry on. So it's been an interesting experience to go from being held hostage by my feelings to now, one of my favorite sayings is that feelings lie, because of the whole equation. I'm sure we've all heard it, but PTFAR. Programming leads to thoughts, thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, actions lead to results. So just because I'm feeling a certain way, it doesn't mean that I can't take the next right action. And then ironically, usually, at least for me, what kind of pulls me out of a situation is just sometimes just a semblance of knowing like, oh, wow, that's not how I would have handled that in the past. So now I've got a little positive momentum where I can be like, oh, I guess I might be a piece of shit, but I'm not as much as I was before. You know what I mean? And kind of that positive momentum will continue to carry me forward. But it's it's interesting to just the two very different ways of handling it. And I credit a lot of that to this group.
Hey, thanks, man. I'm curious to your take on this, and I want to pass the mic around. In your experience, is the self-sabotage to gain a sense of certainty, like bringing an abstract problem to more concrete? Is that what it is?
I from what I can see in myself and what I've casually observed in others, it's absolutely the case. Because when I have, uncertainty is the biggest hindrance, at least for me. We all want certainty. We all want to know what's going to work. And sometimes, when things are uncertain and up in the air, it's almost like easier. Well, let me just hurry up and fuck it up. You know what I mean? Because now at least, and beyond that too, it's like when you're uncertain and you're worried and you're nervous something's not going to work or it's not going to go the right way, it's like sometimes your mind wants to be right more than it wants to be happy.
Completely agree with that. Totally. Well said, as always. Phil, if your internet is okay, can we send the ball over to you? What are your thoughts?
You guys hear
I'm
me?
not sure, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. We can't really see you, or at least I can't, but I think we
Good,
can hear
can
you.
you? Oh man, well, let me know if it could. But yeah, I mean, self-sabotage is something I've dealt with a lot, and for me at least, I mean, I don't really know. I don't really know what it's like for other people. Extreme because it's one of the ways in which I feel like I'm. It's one of the ways in which I feel the most out of control. Not just like not in control, but the spiraling out of control, pretty much.
Shit, Phil. I don't know about you guys, but I can't really hear him. Can you guys hear him? Yeah,
No,
Phil.
he's
I
he's
might
speaking through his throat cancer, Mike. Today. He's like, we
Phil.
have to
I
learn
might pause
to
you.
sit with uncomfortable thoughts.
Phil, I might pause your brother.
Wes, do you mind if I
Yeah,
riff on what MFG was saying?
yeah, please. And then let Phil know something real quick. Phil, if you're in that same house that you've been reporting from for the last handful of weeks, for some reason I feel like the connection's good. We're in the chandeliers in the background. I don't know what room that is, but I feel like that's the kind of the sweet spot there. Ray, let me throw it over to you, brother.
Yeah, that's the electricity conductor. That's the tinfoil hat that he needs to sit under to share his wisdom. Um, Thank you, Wes, for hosting another outstanding roundtable. And MFG, you are our baby Yoda. But like, I love that PTFAR. I'm not sure what P stands for, but it leads to thoughts, it leads to feelings, it leads to action, it leads to results. And I love that mental model. Um, Self-sabotage is something that I have a PhD in. And I think that, especially in addiction and recovery, we talk about that a lot, where it's like, I'm a bum, I'm going to just get high or get drunk again. Uh, or like, I'm not going to get high or get drunk. And then you get high or drunk, and then you're like, I'm a bum. And so, like, you know it's wrong, but you do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I mean, when it's in a situation of addiction, that's kind of easy to understand. But when there's no addiction and we just voluntarily step on landmines, it's a little bit more kind of confusing. And what a therapist once explained to me was like he thought that growing up in a family of five kids, I wasn't getting enough attention. Like I was only getting one fifth of my mom's love. Um, Plus my dad, so like one sixth of my mom's love. And so doing well wasn't getting the attention, but doing something wrong would get attention, right? And so
Mhm.
there's this like, that behavior I repeated in school, right? Where negative attention was at least attention. And then I repeated that in my relationships. And that was a kind of self-sabotage, right? Where I would get myself into trouble because that was my kind of like happy place in a very twisted kind of way. And so all that comes to mind. And a couple other things that come to mind is I saw this quote, and I don't remember if it was in a religious context or not, but like it was basically like humans are designed to think, right? Not just react. Like animals react, right? There's a stimulus, predator, run, predator, fight. Whereas humans are supposed to think. And when presented with a self-sabotage opportunity, I suppose the challenge for me is not just to automatically do it, but to stop and think and maybe go through that PTFAR mental model in order to create that couple of seconds of reflection, that can maybe where I can talk myself out of doing something impulsive. So those are a couple of things that come to mind uh, when I was listening to MFG's wisdom. Wes.
Yeah, outstanding. Ben, what comes to mind for you, bud?
So you're talking about self-sabotaging, and because when you kind of create problems for self, that gives you like this certainty on your like day-to-day life. And I had a big problem. I mean, I still do, but I'm getting better. But like with managing money, I'm notoriously for most of my life just like spent my money to kind of keep myself broke, like subconsciously, so that my day to day, it's like day to day, I just have to worry about my paying my bills, and it gives me an excuse not to deal with like a lot of the realities that I really need to be dealing with in life. So that's like that sparked that right up in my head when you talked.
And Ben, if you don't mind me asking, because I guarantee other men are dealing with this.
Sure.
With the money sabotage, is it, if you don't mind me asking, is it like, going into credit cards? Is it just getting the accounts to zero? Is it just getting it below a certain number in the checking account?
It's
like, where's the thermostat there?
It's how I have, and it's I have exactly what I need each week magically. You know what I'm saying? It's like magically I needed this exact amount of money I had this week. Obviously it makes no sense, but I'll look at my checking account through the week and be like, okay, I can spend. Oh, okay, I can spend. Oh, okay, I got a little more. I can spend this, and then magically, it's like I'll just spend my way down to not save anything. I mean, I've gotten a lot better, believe me, in the last 6 months. I've been able to actually motivate myself to spend some money. But, and that just comes from my dad doesn't have a penny to his name now. I mean, nothing, literally nothing. So that's just kind of what I grew up around. That's part of the thing I'm trying to work out of my psyche. But that's what it is for me, just spending what I have. Luckily, I've always been scared of debt. So it's not really going into debt, but it's just spending what I have.
Ben, I think that's a really relatable situation where I think that's a great example of how we can all kind of like unpack this issue of self-sabotage, because maybe not everyone has, addiction or alcoholism in their history, but like I think we can all relate to that feeling of you have $500 in your bank account and like you go for that, like you supersize that burger combo, right? Whereas like right, like because there's a I mean there's like, it's not a sense of invincibility, but like there's a sense of like money is best enjoyed when it's spent or when it's being spent, right? As opposed to the kind of like unheroic, boring act of not spending it and not saving it.
Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know, if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
Yeah, there's also an element of, hey, I deserve this. It's been a long time since I've done like all those one-liners that get you just over the fence of, making that
I'll
next
figure it
little,
out later.
Yeah. So Phil, let's try you again, bro, if you're okay with it. Internet was a little weird before.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same thing that everyone else has said, but yeah, self-sabotage has been a really big problem for me for a long time. And I think I didn't really even realize that I was going on until, I was in my mid-20s or something, or late 20s. But for me, like one of the main things is when I was really young, like I was just like kind of a total psycho, like socially with other people and stuff. So I only had a couple friends most of my life. And I never really had like close friends. And so it's for some reason, whenever I make a friend and it starts becoming like a closer friend, like it just, I don't know why, it just drives me insane. And like, it just like fucks with my mind so much that I like just start being an asshole to them, or I'll just get really distant, or I'll just like, I don't know, I just freak out and, kind of like push them away. Like I'm not consciously trying to at all. I'm not thinking I need them to get away from me. That's just what happens. And it's just like the most demoralizing thing ever, because it's like the most out of control I ever feel. You know, like I just have no control over my emotions and stuff. And I don't know. It's very weird. It's a very weird problem because it's like it's not conscious to me most of the time. I mean, I'm like aware of it, but it's not like I'm calculating any of this stuff or thinking about it or thinking like, you know, I should do this. It's just like, yeah, it's like just emotions that come out of, you know, darkness or whatever. This part of my brain that I'm not really like aware of or examining at least. And I don't know, it's super hard. It's really depressing and it's really demoralizing.
Phil, can I
Yeah,
ask you about that?
sure.
So, first of all, like, thank you for, again, being so vulnerable, and thank you for shedding light on these feelings because you're not a weirdo or unique or a freak for having these feelings. I have these feelings, okay? And I'm sure many people do. And that's just part of having like a complex brain that it's not just intelligence, but there's so for guys like you and me, our intelligence is super wired up, but then the emotional is there's some loose wires, and it's like really frustrating. And I know you've talked about Buddhism before, and this is an issue I brought up, but like some things that one of the elders in my AA program said is like learning to be able to sit with uncomfortable thoughts and not freak out, not rage out, not kind of like dive into a bottle or just kind of escape by any other, like, you know, do an emotional escape job. But like what comes to mind for you, Phil, when I say learning to sit with uncomfortable thoughts?
Well, you know, Buddhism is a long-term strategy, and being mindful is a very long-term strategy. It's not, you know,
What
um,
button you press?
you can't start to be, you can't start for the first time or the first, you know, 10th time trying to be mindful when your arm is cut off. Like that's not an effective strategy. And it's kind of one of those problems where it's a very serious problem that I'm very screwed up by, and I don't really have anywhere near as enough experience with mindfulness for that to have much purpose at all in this way.
I like what
Yeah.
you said though, dude. Like mindfulness and Buddhism like are a
You
long-term
know,
strategy.
something,
And I think
I
meditation
guess
is probably the same.
actually in terms of mindfulness, actually it's not specifically mindfulness. Sorry about the ambulance. It's not specifically mindfulness, but a different Buddhist form of meditation is called metta, metta. It has nothing to do with the word meta, but it's metta. It's also called loving kindness meditation. And what I really like about it is it's an extremely simple form of meditation where basically I could post a video about it that would make more sense. I'm not going to explain the whole thing now, but like it's a form of wishing joy towards someone in particular. And the thing that's really cool about the practice is you can very, very easily make it much harder or much easier, right? Like, so for most people, it's hard to earnestly and deeply wish joy on themselves, right? Because a lot of people are self-deprecating or whatever, self-hating to some degree. And so it's hard to sincerely and deeply wish those things or think those things towards yourself. So to make it easier, you can think about someone you don't even know. And if that's too hard, you can think about someone who you completely admire. Or, you know, you can do this practice on someone who you don't even know, and so you have no way of having bad emotions towards them, right? Just like an idol or something, like someone like Kobe Bryant or whatever, someone you completely idolize, you don't know anything bad about them at all. So you kind of almost can't think anything bad about them. And that's a very easy way to start. And then you can slowly move towards harder things.
Right on, man.
That seems like a good technique. I haven't done it though. So,
So,
I mean, I've done it a little bit.
yeah, like just describing that process brings to mind a couple of people that absolutely drive me crazy. And I've been trying to do some version of that, like this tenant that's giving my mom a really hard time that I've taken on this burden for my mom. Like I start with raging out whenever she emails me or texts me, or just the thought comes in my head, like raging out. But then I tell myself, like, one step better from there is like, this person does not have the ability to ruin my day. And I have to say that a couple of times before I start to believe it.
The thing though
And
is
I
the
think
thing
I can
is,
move to like wishing them joy, like you said.
you know, I don't know what it's like for you. To me, I don't really like, something that I don't know. It's embarrassing to rant about meditation because I've barely done it. So it's kind of
Okay,
it's pretty ridiculous and pretentious.
Me, man.
It's kind of pretty fake in a lot of ways to talk about this. But like, one thing I really like that I learned from the meditation retreat that I went on quite a while ago. It's almost 10 years ago now. But one thing I really like is he was talking about how mantras are a very easy, like, for example, envisioning a god and idolizing a god, thinking of an idol is a very easy way to feel focused, but it's a very shallow form of focus. And he said that you shouldn't do that. At least when you're here at the meditation retreat, he said, don't think of any idols. Don't think of any other religions. Please try to just focus on what we're doing here. Because mindfulness, he said, is not about mantras. There's this very popular thing in Hollywood that I always look down on, even though I know nothing about it. So it's pretty stupid that I look down on it as much as I do, but it's called transcendental meditation. A lot of people have heard of it. And for some reason I look down on it only because of that thing that I heard, because he said it's very easy to feel focused when you recite a mantra, but it's just not a deep form of focus. It's very surface level. And I don't know, that makes sense to me intuitively. So I just kind of believe that, but I don't know why I'm saying anything.
It's good, man. It's all good.
Mitchell, we should probably
should bring him into the. Should we bring Mitchell into the
get back onto the topic of
Yeah. Well, I wanted to pick MFG's brain real quick, and then we'll hop over to Mitchell. Mitchell, if that's okay with you, we wanted to bring you up and see. Okay, hey, do you struggle with self-sabotage, or do you have any examples? MFG, for what Phil was saying earlier of, hey, this is not even conscious to me at the time why I'm doing it. Are there any models that you use to bring your consciousness back into play and saying, hey, I'm about to do that thing again. I know I feel like I want to do this. Stop doing it. Or is it just one of those things that you can only recognize in retrospect?
I think, at least for myself, for years, I spent time on the front end of that equation, trying to fix my programming to affect my results. And I would, read all the books, go to therapy. And during that time, I would be really trying to integrate these and actually the results were getting worse, believe it or not. So it really has to be this thing where you attack it from both sides. So if you put strict limitations on your actions, you know what I mean? Like you gotta, like I call it like putting guardrails on myself. You know what I mean? Because I want to leave less up to decision and kind of stack the odds in my favor. So if I can compartmentalize the feelings to get the action and results that I want, then that's going to give me the time, space, and bandwidth to be able to go into the programming side of things and start to deal with those feelings. But oftentimes we get caught in a loop where we're just volleying back and forth and never really making progress. You know what I mean? Because we're stuck in this self-sabotage, so we're not getting enough results. So we don't have the time and, more importantly, the energy to start to actually figure the feelings out. So we end up just riding this cycle over and over again. And unfortunately, for me, I tried both ways independently, and that didn't work. I mean, when I just did action and results, I would compartmentalize in unhealthy ways. And then I would have like a big blowout, you know what I mean? And then have to put it back together. And so it's kind of just pulling both oars, at the same time and being patient with the process. You know what I mean? Because I know what you mean, Phil, when it's like you see it happening, you feel it happening, but you don't know how to stop it. And it's coming from a place so deep that you're like, it genuinely feels out of your control. So it's just trying to find ways to like put hard limits on it. You know what I mean? When you start to do a certain thing, if you recognize that as a pattern of behavior that you slip into, you have to be accountable to yourself first and be like, oh fuck, I'm doing that thing again. You know what I mean? And be okay with like, all right, I'm doing that thing because I don't, I'm afraid of this. I don't actually feel this way. And then you can kind of will your way past that and then start to again gain that positive momentum and start creating a new self narrative for yourself. Because when you take the action and get the results in lieu of your feelings, now you're building a body of evidence that says just because I feel a certain way doesn't mean that's how I'm going to act or behave. And so that starts to become self-reinforcing. So hopefully that's helpful.
No, outstanding. Mitchell, let's throw it over to you. And I just want to remind Mitchell, I know this is, your first time coming up here, I believe. These ultimately will be posted to YouTube, but if you say anything that you don't want on there, let me know. We will remove it, et cetera. That goes to everybody. But since you're new to the team, we want to respect your boundaries. So that being said, on this particular topic, do you have any experience with it? What are your thoughts? What comes up for you?
Yeah, can you hear me all right? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I think everyone deals with and they initially categorize it as self-sabotage. But was it MSG? Sorry, I can't say everyone's names here. MFG or something, who was speaking just then.
Yep.
Yeah, he said that you can cut it off at the start, which is this is what I got told. I said to a psychologist once, maybe 3 years ago. I said to him that I've been self-sabotaging what I've been doing, and he said, I hate when people say that. And I was like, why? And he said, because these things aren't hard coded. You can actually just identify it, and just by being able to label it as self-sabotage, you identify it as something that's coming, right? But instead, you just label it as the two separate things, which is something is fine, right? And then you make a choice, or you have a choice between fucking it up and not fucking it up. And it's just, instead of having a single label that determines the fate, you just have two separate ones. And that solved 50% of the shit that I was doing within a month. And I don't know if that would be helpful for anyone else, but just having two separate labels for it, everything's fine. Then the fork happens where it's I'm gonna fuck this up. I'm not gonna fuck this up. Now you're not oh, I'm self-sabotaging, which is you don't even have to be done with the action yet that is going to fuck up everything that you're doing. You don't even have to be done with that action yet. You can be a quarter of the way through it and have ability to stop. But I'm self-sabotaging. Now you determine the end result. You've just made that choice now. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's really all the experience that's all the wisdom I have for it. Someone from a psychologist.
Yeah, Mitchell, no, this is outstanding. And I want to pass the mic back to you in a second. But MFG, when Mitchell describes that, does that give you any additional distinctions? Do you agree with it, disagree with it, the experience? Because I need help learning a little bit more about what Mitchell's describing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a beautiful way to put it, because we tend to think in chunks, right? Our mind wants to make things simple for us to process. So it's easy to, especially when you have a real deep pattern of behavior that you've done time and time again, it's easy for you to get caught up in the momentum of that, and then you start to feel oh, I'm doing this and it's going to go bad. It's going to turn into that. But like you said, you can give yourself that extra beat where you can just hit pause and go, I'm doing that, but I can stop doing that. You know what I mean? But at least for me at first, that was revelatory to be able to even recognize my feelings. I was so deep into the compartmentalization that I would always project it was always something else. You know what I mean? Or somehow I was the victim of something. You know what I mean? I couldn't even see that it was me at first. But as soon as you can start to identify that it's you, yeah, just you can make a choice at that point. And that sounds so cliche and such a throwaway phrase, but you really do have the ability to change it as long as you're okay with it being uncomfortable. because it's just unfamiliar. You know what I mean? It's not good or bad. It's just you don't have experience doing that, so it's gonna be kind of uncharted territory.
And then, Mitchell, do you have any examples that you could give? It doesn't have to be from your own life, but just so the guys can get, and including myself, so you can teach us a little more texture about this model.
Of like the separation of like the use of separate labels. Not one that comes to mind. I mean, the closest thing would be like not using or falling like back into the cycle of like using porn. That would be like the number one example, because that's a real like that you can like really feel immediately. Like everyone gets the chills when they hear just like porn, you know. So it's like that one you really feel. Just identifying and witnessing your movements throughout the week, right? And then and seeing what leads up to the action of like of repeating the cycle, right? So imagining that you've never tried to stop watching it, right? You've never tried to stop using it. In that cycle, you're just unconsciously like, okay, Monday I do this, like 9 a.m. Monday I do this, 10 a.m., 11 a.m. Then by like 7 p.m., it's like, okay, now I pull up my browser. It's like all of those things, they probably all stack on top of each other to equal that, right? But in the frame of like single label, okay, I had a productive day until like 4 p.m. And then that's when I self-sabotage. It's like, well, how about instead I've had productive things happen. Now I can choose, well, I'm going to do one more productive thing that's going to breeze me through like 7 p.m., which is when I would normally just like fall prey to my habits. Or I can just sit back down on my computer and have the 4 hours of dead time that always leads to it, right? And I'm just making this up, but like I hope that made sense. Like you can use the labels as like a hard stop on your actions, as long as you're observing like what you're doing during the day, as long as you're like taking into account. Because if you're not, then it's obviously not, you're not going to be able to apply the label.
Is there something, I think either MFG or Ray said it, is there something here to chunking of like, I guess I can relate to it with diet, for example. Like if I'm on if I'm trying to comply with a hardcore diet and then I eat a cookie, in my mind, it's like, well, now the whole day's ruined. I might as well eat 5,000 cookies, obviously, you know, because I've already broken the chain. Am I tapping into the right vein here?
Yeah, well, like using the like chunking it, like you say, chunking it down to like, I had a good lunch. I mean, I had a good breakfast, I had a good lunch. I made sure I worked out. Now I've had a cookie, right? Chunking it down like that means that the next chunk doesn't have to be negative also. So it's like, it's the same principle. The only difference is like, I'm applying it to like the language you use, right? Then you're applying it to like the actions that have happened so far.
Yeah. Ben, if you've had many cookies today, now's the time to come clean. Let me throw you the mic.
MFG said something about identifying like the cycles that you get in. And so kind of what I thought that relates to what we're talking to now is I kind of had to identify that like I'm creating chaos and like getting to a point where I can recognize when I'm doing that. Now, the best example I can think of now is I'm thinking of my brother who he's kind of gets caught in the same cycles as I do. He doesn't have a license right now, so he's talking to me about like this electric bike he wants to buy and spending all this money. And I'm just like, dude, listen, me and you, we don't have to live like dad does. Like we don't have to live in chaos. You don't have to spend $2,000 on an electric bike. You just need to get around, save your money, get your license back. Like you can do it. You don't have to live like this. And I tell myself the same thing every day. I'm like, no, actually, I don't have to live like this. I can actually just pay this bill on time and not have to deal with the creditor. Or I don't have to spend this money to be broke. You know, so just trying to get to the point where you're recognizing when you're creating a situation for yourself has been my challenge. I think kind of relates to. I think it relates to what Mitch is talking about.
Yeah, Ray, is there something here of a self-worth conversation? Like I'm just going to revert to my baseline self-worth. Um, I can't follow a diet anyway. I never have been able to. I'm just deserving of this low status, whatever. You know, dad, it's in my DNA. Dad always spent every last dime that he had. That's my natural, sea level, self worth. I'm just trying to fight against the gods here, right? It's going to be a useless fight. Um, is there something right there that comes up for you?
Absolutely. Like I'm learning something from all of the men on this call today, and I want to thank you all, guys. Like every single one of you is like just really making an outstanding contribution. And Wes, there's something about like when we let everybody down and everyone has low expectations of us, like we can kind of internalize that where we set the bar low for ourselves and we don't challenge ourselves, we don't, and then we just kind of like live according to our urges, like Mitchell was talking about. And with and just to rip on what Ben said, like uh, we do have the choice, and like I wrote down the words autonomy, choice, and freedom, right? Like which are kind of like values or goals of mine, and they but there's a price, right? Like that you have to pay in a way, like or like those things aren't free and they have to be earned and you have to practice them. And Wes, the expression that comes to mind when you just asked me about is there like a low self-worth kind of reinforcing cycle of negativity? The expression that comes to mind is the hard thing and the right thing are usually the same thing. And so, like for example, Ben, when we talk about not living in chaos, the chaos which is the behavior that our parents modeled for us, um, it's going to be hard to to break that pattern, right? And but the hard thing and the right thing are usually the same thing. Wes, that's what comes to mind for me.
Kevin, I wanted to bring you up, but you made a few comments here. What's your perspective on self-sabotage, self-worth? What hits
I'm out
home
here
for
hustling.
you? Oh, what'd you say, buddy?
Can you hear me? I'm out here hustling Grubhub, or sorry, DoorDash.
Love it. Heck yeah. So, what's your perspective on self-sabotage? Do you do it? Have you seen the pattern? Any contributions, brother?
It began as a it began as an environmental factor. Yeah, for me it began as an environmental factor when I was really young.
How so? If you don't mind explaining a little bit more.
Yep, give me 1 second. I'm picking up a order right now from a restaurant.
Yeah, let us know when you're ready, and yeah. MFG, the self-worth conversation. Is there any element there of well, I'm just worth this low amount anyway, so I might as well just play into that role because it's the inevitable end, or it's the inevitable conclusion to this pattern anyhow.
Yeah. So the challenge, at least for myself, was that self-esteem has to come from actually doing shit. You know what I mean? And so, and also too, it has to be things that you think are valuable or noteworthy. Um, so you have to, so it's a bit of a paradox because you have to, if you want to have more self-worth and self-esteem to feel like you deserve better, well, ironically, you first have to do better to prove to yourself that you are, you know what I mean? So I think it's one of those instances where you have to make it undeniable to you in whatever capacity that might mean. You know what I mean? Like whatever your goal is that you're going to set or whatever your level of work, ethic or productivity, whatever it is that you think is good enough. Like if you were looking at someone else, you'd be impressed, or if you did it, you'd be impressed. do it enough times and it becomes hard to not believe it. But it
100% agree, dude.
takes time though, and that's the hard part. It's actually fucking doing it because you don't
Absolutely.
usually want to.
Just to riff on Ben's discussion of growing up in chaos and like trying to escape it, like escaping that chaos requires like non-chaotic behavior over and over and over again, like you said, Mike. And in terms of and also just to riff on what you said specifically, like self-esteem comes from acting esteemable and esteemable acts, right? And another way to think about it is like people with lots of friends or people with quality friends act like quality friends, right? And so if we are sitting at home, obese, smoking drugs, playing video games, like being mean to everyone online, and we ask ourselves, why don't I have any friends? Why do I feel like shit? Well, not the only way, but one way out of that might be like you want self-esteem, you got to start acting esteemable and see if the self-esteem comes. You want quality friends, you have to start acting like a quality friend. And like Mike said, it takes time. And then you might find yourself surrounded by quality friends. Again, I don't have the wisdom to say that this is going to work for everybody, but this is something I have found with like the difficult tenant I'm helping my mom with, which I keep bringing up, must be annoying. It's like a drinking game now every time I say it, like people drink. But like when I don't act vengeful and when I try to act from a position of service, then I feel good. Then I feel the presence of God. But it's not like God rescues me with an elevator out of my shitty situation. It's like if I do the right thing, then I feel like that kind of worry-free state. And so, Wes, I 100% agree with what Mike's saying, where it's like, unfortunately, it like in like so many things in life, it is the action and the repeated action that kind of must come first in order for us to get that good feeling, that esteemable feeling, those results that we want.
Troy, let's throw it over to you. Troy is an OG.
Troy.
I absolutely love Troy. I don't know if he takes off his shirt prior or if he just doesn't wear shirts ever. But regardless, I dig the consistency, my friend. Troy, what's up, brother?
It's 1 a.m. I'm about to go to bed, so that's why I'm shirtless right now.
So just for everybody who doesn't know.
Yes, on the other side of the world. But it feels like a lot of things that are being talked about are on the macro scale of the things that you want to accomplish within weeks, months, years. A thing that I have to, not have to, I put myself into are a lot of micro interactions with people that you can maybe train yourself to not act in bad faith, but a lot of those things you can't really practice for, especially in a place where you don't know how to speak to people in a different language. So I found that also talking with you guys and looking at how and this does kind of come into the practices of me not trying to be a dickhead to people. You have to, what should I say, act within good faith. If you have a certain goal, but then you have to think about within a moment of interaction, and that could be maybe within a few seconds, you have to see whether or not your goal at that moment within a very small interaction is in good faith or not. And if it's not, you have to redirect your goal in a conversation. And this goes for me talking to maybe a cute Japanese girl.
Because I'm starting to read between the lines here.
Yeah, but also even I'm looking at interactions with two Japanese girls, but also with other guys that are what is my goal in this? And if my goal in this very singular interaction is not within good faith, then I have to redirect my interactions. I have to redirect my way of speaking and what I'm trying to do with this. And sometimes you have to cut this interaction loose. Sometimes you have to see what is going to benefit everyone, not just yourself, but everyone within this interaction. What is going to be better? And you have, as if it's like, as if you've played Fallout before, you have a bunch of different ways to react, a bunch of different answers to a question or a statement, and you're just like, okay, am I going to try to get to know them better in the goal of trying to get another drink out of someone or try to get in bed with them? Is that in good faith? If it's not, then you have to completely change your plans. So it's a little bit more difficult though, doing those micro changes as opposed to looking at like the macro scale of, oh, is this going to fuck with my diet? Is this going to uh, spend some money out of a savings account that will be put into better use? Like those things you can, I think you have a little bit more of time to think about those things, but those micro interactions I feel like are a lot more difficult, and it's something that I'm just kind of going through right now. And yeah, it just seems like um, those things you have to be a little bit more quick-witted, and practice sometimes is useful, but sometimes you have to just think about what is the good faith action.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
and
I
Troy,
think I'm picking up on what you're saying. Yeah, Ray, please.
well, the way I phrase it, first of all, great to see you, Troy. As always, love you, man. Thanks for coming in via satellite from the other side of the world. Oyasumi. What I call it these days is like acting from my values, right? Which is just another way of saying acting from good faith. And but when I say acting from my values, it makes me think about what are my values? Like, what do I want to be known for? Is another way to say it. And if I am acting from my values, then there's no bad results, really. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you. Like, if you're acting from good faith, and you don't get the result that you were looking for does not obtain, well, that's out of your control, right? Because all you can control is whether you act in good faith or bad faith, whether you act from your values or not from your values. So, Wes, that's a couple of things that come to mind.
Absolutely. I would absolutely say, yeah, it's working within your values versus what you're trying to go for the immediate, I guess,
Trying to get, just like
dopamine,
acting however
the
you have
dopamine,
to in order to get, right?
the little dopamine bump that you get, as opposed to like what your values are that will sustain a longer lasting feeling of, I guess, satisfaction. And yeah, it's a little bit more difficult when you're having those immediate interactions. And also, one last thing, Ray, good job on your Japanese. Oyasumi, perfect.
Love it. Well, let's go around here because I know we're running short on time. MFG, any takeaways or additional contributions, brother?
Yeah. I thought of it as Troy was when we were speaking there is it's gonna feel weird when you do it.
Mm.
And it's easy to have a weird feeling be conflated with a bad one. So, Ray, you're talking about growing up in chaos. And I think when we talk about being addicted to patterns of behavior, we forget that we get addicted to the feelings because they're familiar. So when you're used to chaos, you have like reticular activation where you're going to find the chaos in a situation because that feels familiar. It feels like home. You know how you respond in chaos. You know how you navigate it. What you like for me, one of my mantras I say every fucking day is boring is good. You know what I mean? Boring leaves space for stability, excuse me, stability and creativity. But that's not what I was used to. So I would always find the chaos or create the chaos. It's being able to be aware of the patterns of behavior and then also understand that this is gonna feel weird at first and it's gonna be unfamiliar, but just staying with it because eventually that becomes your new default. You know what I mean? And you, by doing that, to your analogy earlier, Wes, it's like you're turning up that thermostat because you're creating a new narrative experientially that it's okay, I went through that, it was unfamiliar, didn't fucking kill me, and I came out better on the other side, the results are better. Okay, and then that starts to self-reinforce. But just be ready, it's going to be peculiar as you start to embark on that journey.
It's an outstanding point. Like it sounds so simple, but when you're in it and you feel that way, it that discomfort can get you to revert back to whatever prior behavior. So knowing that it's like, no, this is what it feels like. Thank you for that, brother. Phil, let me throw the ball over to you.
Can you guys hear me? So what Mike was just saying made me kind of reminded me of like, I don't know, one of the bigger like mental challenges that I get to when I try to like actually do some of this stuff is like what I was thinking when Mike was saying that, and kind of what I was saying earlier with the whole like I'm not a fan of mantras is the reason I'm not a fan of mantras is because they feel fake to me. And that's like a huge, that whole concept of like fakeness is like a giant fucking problem in my mind. Because my parents are super fake and I have this giant complex about like not being fake or whatever. And it's been like this whole thing my whole life of like not wanting to be fake. And that leads me to this like kind of like weird, like distortion of perfectionism where like I want to be perfect, but I don't know how. So I do nothing or whatever because I don't know how to be perfect or whatever because I see everything that is less than perfect as fake. And you know, I've grown out of that a little bit as I've gotten older, just because you know reality doesn't really let you do that much because you have to be imperfect if you're going to try to get better at anything. But I still like I don't know how to really. I don't know. I'm curious if you guys or if Wes, if you have any like thoughts on this. Like I don't know how to get over the mental hang up there of like, you know, I still feel that I feel that very, very strongly. And I feel that very strongly when like overwhelmingly like it controls me amount of strength that like that I don't want to be fake. And when I'm trying to do basically what Mike was just suggesting of like, you know, it's going to feel weird. I can't even start to do it because it feels like I'm just, you know, it feels like I'm just, I don't really know how to explain it. This isn't really exactly right, but it feels like I'm choosing to lose my mind or something, or I'm choosing to like just, you know, it just feels so uncomfortable and so alien. I just feel completely fake. And I feel like it's all just, I'm just making stuff up that the weirdness of that, I guess, allows me to jump to the conclusion that this is all bullshit and I should just give up and stop trying this because it's all just nonsense. And I don't know, you know, I mean, I could talk for an hour about that and not really get any, you know.
No, actually, Phil, if you don't mind, I think it's actually an excellent topic for us to like go deep into on Friday if you guys are cool with it, because I think you're hitting on a gold mine here of like a really good conversation. And yes, I do have a lot of thoughts on it. I don't know if they're correct or not, but I definitely have a lot of thoughts on it.
Okay.
So yeah, let's table that for Friday, if that's cool with everybody. And then Ray, let me throw the ball over to you. Final words of wisdom, bud.
Well, to quote the very estimable and wise Charlie Munger, it's all been said, nothing to add. What an outstanding roundtable. Thank you, gentlemen.
Hell yeah. Mitchell, dude, thank you so much for coming on, brother. That was an amazing contribution and distinction, I would say. That's helped me and I'm sure the other guys on here. Any final comments, bud? And where I can assume where you're tuning in from, but just to clarify, where are you coming in from right now?
Well, where are you assuming first?
Australia.
I'm going to assume Australia.
Boston?
Yeah, that's right. Most Americans ping me as English. Most English people ping me as American.
That's awesome, man. Any final words of wisdom, bud?
No, that's it. I mean, first time in this like group part. Seen the videos, but yeah, that's it. Nothing
Yeah, thank you for joining, brother. It's been a pleasure having you, Troy. Let me throw it over to you, bro. I know you're about to get to bed. Any final words of wisdom or comments?
Just to respond to Phil of feeling like you're an imposter or you're feeling like that it's not worth it. It seems that you're knowledgeable enough to know the tenets of um, eating right, exercise, um, mindfulness, and I would say a fourth pillar just is sleep. Those four things. You have those things in mind. Um, it will feel like at times that it will be like it's like, oh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not getting the exact 8 hours of sleep. Some days I might get 6, some days I might get 7.5. But at the same, or you're not doing every single thing that you've listed on an exercise, but these times that you do them, like you're still making some amount of progress. So it doesn't matter if you are getting the 100% mark. Wes, you've talked about eight, and I've really taken this in, and I've told this to a lot of my students. 80%, you've passed. You've gotten 100. 80% is 100%, and 70%, that's a B plus to me. You're doing all right. And to not beat yourself up that you're not hitting the exact 100%, you're not a fucking superhero. You're not going to hit the exact bullseye every time. So, and who the fuck cares that you're not doing that exact point? No one fucking cares. If you're feeling better, if you're getting if you're feeling slightly better the next day, then that's all that matters.
Yeah, hell yeah. Love it, dudes. Thank you guys so much. Let's take a deep dive into it on Friday. Troy, thank you. And Mitchell, thank you guys for coming from way different time zones. MFG, thanks as always for being vulnerable and bringing up this great topic. Phil and Ray, love you guys. Thanks. See you on Friday. Phil. Later.
Love you, Mike.
See you guys.
Love you, Wes. Love all my boys.